brush again with you. How much is that dog in the window?
The weather in Waco, partly cloudy today and Tuesday. A few thunderstorms along the Gulf Coast. The day after Mother's Day was an ordinary workday in downtown Waco. Wayne Farmer Jr. went to work at Paget's. Up and down the main drag, Austin Avenue, people went to their jobs ready for the week's challenges. It was just an ordinary Monday in Middle America. Farmers repeated their daily prayer for rain. It was calm, very calm. The calm before the storm. During Monday afternoon, newspaper reporter John Edward Weems and his dad watched clouds begin to build up over Waco from their vantage point at a ranch near Temple, south of Waco. There was a disturbance in the air above central Texas, caused when warm air coming from the Gulf of Mexico to the south mixed with colder air from the north. It was the type of atmospheric collision that could produce thunderstorms and rain. These weather conditions were not unusual and not scary at all.
I always heard two things about Waco. One was that a tornado would never strike there because the Indians had built their camp right there on the river. The other was that if you ever drink Brazos water, you will always come back.
Indian legend was strong and believable in this central Texas community. The city owed its existence to the Waco tribe of Indians, who made a settlement here on the banks of the Brazos. And drinking the water may have been one of the reasons the Indians built that camp. The land along the river had abundant natural hot springs, delivering warm, healthful water. Now, though, the no-tornado Native American legend was about to bite the dust, literally. As John Edward Weems later reported in his book, The Tornado, around 4:30 p.m., a weather radar scope image at Texas A&M University to the south showed an appendage hanging from the bottom of the growing cloud formation. Trained weathermen know this appendage as a hook. The hook is characteristic of tornadoes seen on radar. Today, any appearance of a hook generates widespread radio and television bulletins warning of severe weather. But in May of 1953, Waco had only 2 radio stations, so there was no warning.
WACO was here when I was in Baylor in 1935 through 39. And I worked at WACO. It was my first job. And KWTX was here.
Standing out in front of 9th and Austin with one of our managers, and it started raining real hard. And he put his hand out, and a big slap of rain came down, and he looked at it and looked at me, and he said, "That rain's hot." And he said, "You know, they say that when that rain is hot like that, that there's going to be a tornado, but of course we know that's not going to happen here."
The hook was a tornado. It came at the city from the southwest, traveling north and east. It hit a residential area called Bell's Hill first, casting roofs and walls and debris everywhere. Then it struck the Cotton Palace area near downtown, where it demolished a reinforced concrete wall at the Sun Pool, a popular swimming spot. Young swimmers who had sought shelter from the storm behind the wall were the first to die. On its way downtown, the tornado wiped out Katy Park, home of the popular Waco Pirates baseball team. It caused substantial damage to the Dr. Pepper bottling plant on 5th Street, home of the nation's oldest soft drink. Then, without warning, it sought out Austin Avenue, downtown's main street, as though it had been programmed by nature to destroy the heart of the city. Downtown, debris flew as the winds surged. People held desperately to any structure they could find to avoid flying too. Automobiles were picked up and turned around or flipped easily into the air. As buildings crumbled, people were trapped or buried alive. The wind was so strong, it caused the reinforced landmark Amicable building to sway. But the 22-story building held its ground defiantly. Other downtown buildings were less fortunate.
And the wind started blowing, and it really got dark. I had never seen a thunderstorm or anything like that that got that dark. But it was really, there was just no light outside. Everybody got as nervous as they could be. I tried to tell them that don't worry, this isn't anything, it's just a thunderstorm, and we've had hundreds of thunderstorms, don't worry about it. And very shortly thereafter, I looked out the window, and there was the R.T. Dennis sign right down, spread out on 5th Street. And I knew then that I was whistling past the graveyard.
Paget's had relocated to 9th and Austin. The former Paget's building at 5th and Franklin collapsed in the wind, as did structure after structure along Austin Avenue. Chris's Cafe, the pharmacy, the R.T. Dennis furniture store building. The tornado destroyed virtually all of the buildings around Waco's historic square, but somehow spared Old City Hall. The storm met the Brazos River at the suspension bridge. The bridge had withstood almost 100 years of cattle, cowboys, and Chisholm Trail traffic. The bridge swayed momentarily, but its mighty steel cables held against the fierce wind, and it finally settled again into its moorings. Then the tornado that could never strike Waco left as it arrived, without warning, doing more damage to East Waco before returning to the sky that had spawned it.
It got dark, started raining huge raindrops. And when I say it got dark, it got nighttime dark. Then the rain came down in sheets, and it rained for some little bit before we noticed the wind blowing. And it must have been right about at that time that the tornado struck, because I can remember the front window glass at Paget's bulged outward, but they did not break.
Not knowing the wind had been a tornado, Wayne Farmer Jr. decided to run down Austin Avenue toward 7th Street to check on his fiancee's mother, who worked at Cox's department store. He remembered to take a still camera with him.
People were just terrified. They were standing out on the streets in doorways, just standing, total disbelief and shock on their faces, it looked to me like.
When he saw the damage, Wayne Farmer returned to work to swap his still camera for a 16mm motion picture camera. During the next few days, Wayne Farmer Jr. and other Waco photographers would document massive damage as the quiet community by the Brazos began to count its losses and begin to recover from the tornado that could never hit Waco.
I know during this time I went 3 days and 2 nights without any sleep, trying to get everything together and shot and shipped out to the right places.
What the cameras recorded was the worst fate a community can ever suffer: mass murder by nature. The tornado carved up a 23-mile path, leaving 114 people dead, more than 1,000 others injured, 2,000 automobiles wrecked or ruined, and 850 homes damaged or destroyed. 196 commercial buildings either capsized in the storm or were banished to demolition, and 376 buildings were rendered unsafe. Total property damage was more than $51 million. The cameras of Wayne Farmer Jr. and his dad, D.R. Dietrich, Jimmy Willis, and other photographers documented this destruction thoroughly and dramatically.
Mrs. Brown of 605 North 5th Street, whose telephone is 34839, is a PBX operator and is willing to help.
Raymond Ford of the Community State Bank says to bring food to the bank. It will be distributed from there.
Pastor Arnold has just announced that Crestview Lutheran Church will be open for anyone needing shelter. That's at 800 New Road.
Hundreds of people injured in the tornado were carried by ambulance and by a fleet of volunteer vehicles to the city's 2 hospitals, Hillcrest and Providence, and to treatment facilities at the Veterans Administration Center and James Connolly Air Force Base. No one ever received a bill for the emergency transportation, and Waco doctors later voted to provide medical treatment of tornado victims free of charge. Citizens went to work even before the shock of the storm had worn off. Mayor Ralph Wolf had declared martial law in the streets, and a nerve center for communications was quickly put together in the Amicable Building. There were humans still alive, trapped in the tornado's destruction. Tons of debris and rubble would have to be trucked away. Concern and danger still lurked. More tornadoes could come, or broken gas mains downtown could catch fire and explode. The search for life under crumbled downtown buildings would go on for days as law enforcement and fire officials were joined by volunteers, corporate heavy equipment, and military. The heroic effort by weary rescuers saved several citizens and galvanized the community's will to move beyond the tragedy. Diverse sources such as James Connolly Air Force Base and Texas Power and Light contributed electrical generators that brought the rescue effort out of darkness. Soldiers worked alongside civilians. Neither education nor social status mattered. Companies loaned cranes and heavy equipment to move the mountains of debris into waiting dump trucks. Ordinary cars with white flags identifying them as emergency vehicles supplemented the overworked ambulances to transport the injured for treatment and the dead to funeral homes. The local troops of the National Guard appeared on the scene quickly and voluntarily.
My dad was an assistant city attorney for the city of Waco at the time and the National Guard commander. And he said by the time he got there, others had already started gathering because some of the guardsmen worked in downtown Waco and they already started gathering there, and they were there in strength within a couple of hours.
Waco still mourns for lives sacrificed in the storm, but gradually and with purpose and determination, downtown Waco was rebuilt, block by block and building by building. The killer tornado spawned death and devastation on downtown Waco. May 11th, 1953 was a dark moment in the city's history. Yet it also ignited a new spirit of determination and catalyzed citizens' energy to move forward, hand in hand, past negative events.
Out of the tragedy and the trauma of that awful time has come a plan to rebuild and to go forward stronger and more revitalized than probably would have ever happened any other way.
Today, at 4th and Austin, the stately building renamed from Amicable to Alico presides over a vibrant downtown where residents and visitors can find food, shopping, museums, entertainment, and many other businesses. A few blocks away, Heritage Square faces the new downtown Waco, where people turn to tomorrow with the confidence of a community that learned to survive tragedy. But everyone keeps an eye on the weather.
If you can survive a tornado, you can handle about anything that life will bring your way. And you need to remember that when you survive a tornado or anything of less magnitude or greater, that you're not surviving it by yourself.
Sears and Roebuck Farm Store has called to say that they have another chainsaw in operation and ready to go.
Reba McNett, I believe that is, has a room for a couple.
The American Red Cross Relief Center has been moved to the J. Hines School of 1102 Paul Quinn.
All three Waco banks will be operating at the Community State Bank for emergency business.
To the folks in Killeen and western Missouri, Mrs. Robert Bysart, B-Y-S-A-R-T, and family,